This is the German cemetery in Epinonville. Overgrown, unnoticed, and quiet, the final resting place of 1,131 German soldiers of World War I. It is one of 192 German military cemeteries in France. While history has left no conclusive record, we know there are at least 750,000 German dead buried in France. German cemeteries evoke a different feeling than the perfectly ornate American war cemeteries or the orderly and maintained French cemeteries. German cemeteries are darkly somber and sometimes unkempt, but beyond the differences, remind us that these two were young men, not so different than the young men fighting on the other side for France, Britain, and America. No long-term vision regarding military burials seemed necessary at the start of the war. It was expected to be short, over in a matter of weeks, definitely within a few months. The names of the dead were noted, but they were mostly buried in mass graves. As it became apparent with the onset of the winter of 1915 that the war would not be over so soon, more organized cemeteries started to be created. German cemeteries during the war held not just their own dead, but also with Allied soldiers buried amongst the Germans. The German motto, often written above the entrance to these early cemeteries, was Im Leben Feind, im Tod verrennt, enemies in life, united in death. Of course, this practice of commingled burial didn't last. After the war, the French went to great efforts to remove French soldiers buried in these places and reinter them in French national cemeteries. With the war ending with the signing of the Treaty of Versailles, all nations pledged to respect and maintain the graves. Over time, small temporary burial sites were consolidated into more formal permanent burial grounds. Just as the French ceded land to American and British dead, so did they give land for eternal rest to the German war dead. The German cemeteries, when they received grave markers, received dark crosses to mark the graves of the defeated soldiers. These original crosses were wood, and even during the war years, we have reference to them being black, possibly covered in a tar-like substance or coating for protection from the elements. In the 1960s and 70s, the grave markers in cemeteries throughout France and Belgium were replaced with either metal or stone crosses, now, like then, in dark colors. Most German cemeteries have a large cross as a central marker. It's common to see up to 4 soldiers buried to a marker here. The years help indicate when these areas saw their most intense action. Many of the cemeteries in this area indicate deaths in 1914, 16, and 18, the initial invasion, Verdun, and the 1918 spring offensives, and then the final battles of the war. Among the headstones, we can find several marked Jewish graves. Like us, the Germans recognized their Jewish dead during the war. Over 100,000 German Jews served, and 12,000 were killed in action. The German army had at least 81 field rabbis serving as military chaplains. After Kristallnacht and then the subsequent invasion of France, the Germans tried to eradicate any evidence of Jewish soldiers and many headstones were destroyed. In 1968, these markers were restored, today with the Star of David and a Hebrew inscription. Nearly every German cemetery has a necropolis, common graves bearing the bodies of hundreds of soldiers. Within the bordered area you see here are the bodies of 227 Germans, and like so many of the dead of all nations, they are unknown. Every cemetery also has a name book by a metal box at the gate, detailing the soldiers who lie here. The German War Graves Commission, the Volksbund, was founded just before Christmas 1919 as a citizens' initiative volunteer association, but they had no authority over graves in France. They recorded graves and worked to help German families locate where their relatives were buried. With Germany besaddled with reparations and little funds to dedicate to caring for graves, the Volksbund raised funds from its membership, 46,000 by 1922, street collections, and gravesite sponsorships. By 1925, an agreement had been reached for the Volksbund to take a more active role in cemetery care. Ultimately, the Volksbund, always a conservative organization, assimilated into the National Socialist state apparatus in the 30s. During the German occupation of France during World War II, the Wehrmacht respected the cemetery grounds of all nations, But a second war in these lands ultimately left many hard feelings, and there's little care given today to the German cemeteries. While the Volksbund pays for local landscapers, it's clear there's not the same level of upkeep given to Allied cemeteries. Even so, we can still find remembrances here. Candles, photos, and other mementos to remember that these men are not monsters. They are not too different than the young men of France, Algeria, Canada, India, Britain, America, and so many other countries in this global conflict. What we say of our dead here is true of theirs. A man is only lost if he is forgotten. In at least one place here, and in countless family stories, their names live forever.